gonna let people load in for a second. Give it about a minute. Meanwhile, I'm gonna share. And if you guys want to share this out, feel free. There's so much to do before I can get started. And that weight bot is just, woof, it's killing me. Okay. Hi, guys. My name is Deanna, and you're in the Laughter After Trauma show. This show is really about highlighting people who have found triumph. It's just everyday people who have found triumph over trauma. We've always all have experienced trauma in some way, shape, or form. Not all of us are PTSD or diagnosed with something, but throughout life, we just managed to not escape without some form of trauma. And these past couple of years have been pretty rough. And so what I'm doing here with this show is trying to bring light and lightness to a heavy topic. I myself personally am a survivor of intimate partner violence. And so what I like to do is just share with people that if I can overcome and find laughter after, so can you. We all have inside of us all the power we need and the magic we need to heal. So without any further ado, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Natalie. And to be perfectly honest with you, Natalie's a little bit of an enigma. And so we are all going to learn some about Natalie together here tonight. Natalie has a podcast and a show here on Fireside. It's called To All the Men I've Tolerated Before, which I think is just the most clever title around. And really, it's about what it's like to basically live in a world that has been dominated by men, and how that scene is trying to change, and what changes are coming about, and what it's like, just what it's like all around. And so I'm going to invite Natalie onto camera so we can see her lovely face, and we will get started. Now, hey, just a little bit about just a little bit about the show, guys. Also, in the show, we are going to be, the first half of the show is just going to be us chatting, getting to know each other, getting to know Natalie. And then we're going to open it up to the stage, because I really do love the fact that because we're on Fireside, we get to interact. It's not like a regular podcast where you're just talking to yourself for an hour. And then, going off somewhere else and hoping people are listening, right? We know who's here. So Natalie, first, before we get started, I want to get just a little bit of back body. I want to just get a little bit of your background, and then I'm going to do a few this or that questions to kind of like break the ice and get to know a little bit about you. So first of all, where are you from? Do you have family? What's your career? Tell us your passions. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I've had a few careers in my professional life. I've been a teacher, and then I was a theater educator, facilitator. I think is the easy way to say what I did for the theater.
Hmm.
Then I worked in college enrollment, and now I'm giving a hand at trying to do freelance work full time with the content creating and things like that.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's awesome. So where are you from?
I
Where are
am
you based?
from Northwest Indiana on the other side of Lake Michigan from Chicago.
Hmm.
Have a sister. She's younger. We're about 17 months apart. Um, Grew up in Indiana and then graduated college and ended up in Dayton, Ohio. So I didn't get very far and I didn't get to leave the Midwest to my chagrin, but maybe one day.
Yeah.
And currently, right now, it's just me and the cat at home. So no kids, no live in partner, just me, Penelope, and the podcast.
Me, Penelope, in the podcast. I like it. I mean, what more do you need, right?
Yeah,
All right, cool. So, anything that in particular that you're passionate about? Like, hey,
sure.
if there was this thing that you could do and it didn't matter, money didn't matter, what would you be
Oh,
passionate about?
if money didn't matter,
Mm.
I would just craft myself the perfect Broadway season every year because it
I
wouldn't
love that.
matter what town the show was in
Mm.
or where the show was or if only really expensive seats were available. I would just every year be like, what shows do I really want to see this year and make a priority?
I
And
love
then
it.
spend probably a lot of time in New York.
I love that. I'm down with that. All right, let's do some this or that questions, and then we're
Sure.
going to get into your story. So let's do this one. I always ask this to people who have cats because there's a reason, and you probably will get the reason. So toilet paper, over or under?
Over.
Oh, okay. So
Penelope doesn't tear up things. I'm very lucky.
oh, that's nice. I used to have a cat, so I'm over too, but I
Mhm.
used to have a cat that would bat the toilet paper. So I'd go into the bathroom and all the toilet paper roll
Yeah.
was on the floor because they would just be like so entertained that it was unrolling. They didn't tear it up really. It was just like chung, chung, chung.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, but if I put it under, obviously it didn't unroll and therefore it lost its appeal. But
Yeah.
it's
Penelope doesn't play very often. She's kind of lazy and unaware of
it's
things that are available around her.
until the camera's on because I
Yeah.
know she likes the camera.
Oh, yeah. She'll
Okay.
make her appearance for her
Yeah.
fans.
Okay. All right. So if you are you a book person? Like do
I
you read?
am.
All right. So
Yeah.
do you prefer books like in your hand or Audible?
Oh, it depends. I I have a Kindle. That's where I hoard free library books. But if it's a graphic novel or anything that requires me to be a visual person, I can't read those on the screen. I have to hold my comic books to really be
Okay.
able to take in the art.
Okay.
Yep.
So graphic novels, what's your favorite graphic novel?
Well, currently, now I gotta look at my shelf. I really enjoy Squirrel Girl. So she's
Mm,
like a lesser known Marvel hero, and she's
okay.
like a college student who has a squirrel tail, and she's just kind of quirky and fun and like really joyful, even though she's a superhero who has to fight crime. And I love the new revamp of Miss Marvel, where they've revamped her as a Muslim American teenager.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. And I happen to to know or have met I think the girl who's playing her in the upcoming Anjali.
Yeah, on
Yeah.
Disney Plus.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I think she's Miss Marvel. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was in one of my mastermind groups anyway.
Well,
So,
that's fun.
yeah, isn't that cool, right? Okay. I'm not much into the comic or Marvel world, so I don't know much about it. The only graphic novel I know about is because my son read it and it was the Coheed and Cambria graphic novel. I don't know if you know them, but
I don't know that one.
okay, well, I'm going to just tell you real quick cuz it's totally off the subject. But if Coheed and Cambria is a music group and they kind of have a lot of heavy influence from like Rush and maybe that whole era. But great, super talented group of musicians. The singer is amazing, and their entire catalog is based off a graphic novel that was written by the lead
Oh,
singer. So they have
that's
a graphic
cool.
novel and all the music to go with it.
I
So,
love I love figuring out how people came up with their projects. So my favorite musical from this season was Hades Town, that I got to see in Chicago. And that entire musical is not only based off of a Greek myth, but it's based off of a folk album that's based off of the Greek myth.
right? So, I mean, people are crazy creative. I love it. So, I mean, if you're into graphic novels, you probably would love this because there's a
Hmm.
whole storyline, but then you'd go in Spotify or wherever, Apple, and wherever
Yeah.
you get your music, and you can get the whole story through the music too. If you like kind of rock alternative
Yeah.
music. Anyway. All right. Well, there's something to put in your pipe and smoke it. Okay.
There we
So,
go.
there you go. All right. So let's talk about you. Tell me about your life. Tell me about things you've been through, overcome, wherever you want to start. There's nothing
Sure.
off. And if I have questions, I'll stop you. Believe me.
No problem. So I guess I always start this story with why the podcast got to be. Because before the COVID-19 pandemic, I was working at a professional theater organization in town. And then we went under quarantine, and like a lot of theater organizations, we could no longer operate, and we also couldn't keep staff to the capacity that we were used to having staff because live theater can't flourish under a pandemic, it turns out. Who would have
Who'd
known?
have
And
thunk that?
who'd have thunk that once people can't be live in the theater, all of a sudden the theater stopped making money.
Theater over
So,
Zoom probably does not translate.
oh my gosh. No.
I don't know. Anyway.
It was an adjustment. So I ended up being laid off, which was unfortunate. And I had this mindset during my entire unemployment because, I was very lucky to be unemployed when I was because the government kind of had a handle on unemployment. They were helping us out a little bit more. I'm a single person. So it's really just like making sure me and the cat can eat and like pay rent, and we're pretty good. So I had a little bit of time to like kind of take a breath. And the entire time I just kept thinking, I'll go back. The pandemic will end. People will get to go to shows again, and then they'll call, and I will get to go back to the theater and this job that I love. But I'm also not very good at sitting still. So I also had to like recreate this relationship with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm an extrovert who loves to talk and chat people's ears off and meet new people every day. So that was a new adjustment. But I had always had this running joke, and it's because Netflix picked up that young adult series To All the Boys I've Loved Before and turned
Mm-hmm.
it into a 3-movie project. And we'd get the ads, or someone would say something about watching it. And I go, man, if Netflix called me, I guess I'd have to tell them that my show has to be called To All the Men I've Tolerated Before. And people would laugh. And then finally, one of my friends and someone I knew through the theater looked at me and he said, "When are you going to do something with that?" And I went, "What?" He goes, "That line, the joke." He goes, "It's the perfect title for what's going on in the world now because people are getting over the bullshit that they've had to put up with. And a lot of that bullshit comes from the patriarchy and men, and it's everywhere."
Mm-hmm.
And I went, "I don't have time to do anything." That's my biggest excuse of all time. I'm like, I don't have time to do anything.
We're in a pandemic. You're not working,
Right.
and you don't have time to do anything.
Well, this was before the pandemic. So
Oh,
it
okay.
was while I
All
was
right.
working
Gotcha.
and I didn't have time to do anything. But
Mhm.
finally, I'm unemployed and I do have time to do something.
There you go.
So a friend and I sat down. I kind of went through the idea. She agreed to take off of my plate the tech because sometimes I'm very tech phobic. If you ever come to All the Men I've Tolerated Before live, you'll always see that I'm very surprised that I can touch the buttons in the correct order. And then sometimes I don't. And then sometimes someone has to go, "You're still on mute," because it
Right.
automatically mutes you whenever you touch anything.
You don't need to tell me. I have
Yeah.
started more than one show where my guest had to unmute because they weren't on camera yet, but they were up and they were like,
Hmm.
hey, Deanna, you're muted.
You're
And I'm like,
muted.
oh, good. I just did my whole introduction. Muted. I get to take that out of the
Yeah.
audio when I put it over to the podcast. I
Yeah.
mean, seriously. I'm tech challenged too. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Yeah.
And that was what always hung me up onto To All the Men I've Tolerated Before, because I love podcasts and I love podcasting. And I started with My Favorite Murder, and then I would just be consuming these really great female forward podcasts like the Bechtel cast that looks at the movies that we're watching through the feminist lens, Self-Helpless, which is run by two professional comedians and one former professional comedian, and they're going through self-help trends and how to keep yourself healthy. And I love podcasts, and I was always consuming them. So I knew if I was going to do anything, and I tell people all the time, I go, To All the Men I've Tolerated Before could have been anything. I could have sat down and I could have made it a book. I could have made it my Netflix special. I could have made it a blog. I go, but I was in love with podcasting. So when I had the chance to sit down and calm myself down, I learned how to podcast. And now here I am a year later, and we're still going.
That's I mean, and that's awesome, you know. I Yeah, clap it up. I did not um I don't know. I love podcasts. I listen to
Yeah.
podcasts. I a while back wanted to do a podcast and got an Anchor account, and that's about as far as it went. It was
Yeah.
so much for me to try to wrap my head around, and it was just me
Mm-hmm.
trying to do everything. And like you said, with work and everything else, and I'm like, I just can't learn another thing right now.
Yeah.
And so I just never did it. When Fireside came around, I decided, oh, maybe this is the way because it's a whole production studio. You don't really have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to take it off of here and bring it out to the rest of the world because Fireside right now is, small. I think it'll grow.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stick with it here, but I'm going to also spread it around. But now I have less apprehension because I get all the assets from here.
Yeah.
It's like a little mini production studio. People come in, they watch. I do simulcast. Hope that's okay because I didn't really
Yeah.
ask you.
It's okay.
I do simulcast to YouTube. It's okay. I got like 3 followers because I'm very bad at because I'm not good at marketing. So nobody follow. Hey, you guys who are on here, I have a YouTube channel. It's called Laughter After Trauma. You should go follow the YouTube channel too.
Go follow the YouTube.
There you go. All right. So now people know. But, so I do broadcast it out, but I am going to start utilizing that, marketing that, and all of it, and
Mm-hmm.
embedding it into my website so that people are aware of it. But all of it just takes so much time, and I'm real intimidated by it all. So I'm just doing it very slowly. I got my Libsyn account now. I
Yeah.
got a few episodes that I've um, edited.
We're
Once
going to
I'm
do it.
It's gonna
It's going to
happen. It's gonna
happen.
happen.
Eventually, you learn how to push all the right buttons and all the right hashtags and all of it.
Yeah. So
And
you
what,
started the podcast and you did it for a year.
yeah, I started the podcast. I've been doing it for a year, and it's one of the best things that's ever happened to me because it finally got my therapist's one true wish where I admitted to her, well, I guess I have been abused, and I guess that's okay because the abuse wasn't at my own hands. And she was like, there you go. Look at you
Right.
processing things.
I love it. But let's talk about it. Would you share that with us?
Yeah. So I think there is a little bit of an imposter syndrome that comes with being mentally or emotionally abused or having a lot of experiences with gaslighting.
Mm,
Because number one, gaslighting, I like to explain it as okay, well, you're not a Marvel person, but there's a Loki show and they have all of these variants.
hmm
And I love media about time travel. And one of the rules of time travel is you can't ever go back and fix something in time because it creates two timelines that coincide each other.
Right. You mess up the continuum. I
You
get it.
mess up the continuum. And
Got
then
it.
if you go back to your present and you've changed something in your past, your brain has two realities that it keeps battling in your head. And finally, one day I sat down with that and I went, well, that's what gaslighting feels like.
Mm-hmm.
because you lived under a narrative and a guise and you were told a bunch of things were true. And then one day the person that was gaslighting you ripped up all of that truth and went, haha, actually, it's all the opposite of what you've
Mm-hmm.
believed. I still get my way. And then you're just kind of left single on your own or trying to grapple this with friends, trying to make two timelines merge in your head.
Mm-hmm. 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 You know, the phrase gaslighting comes from an old movie,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a movie that a man drove a woman, his wife, crazy by turning the gas lamp down
Yeah.
a little bit every day, where she would keep going, why, what's happening, why is
Yeah.
it dimmer in here? And he would be like, you're crazy, nothing's
Mm-hmm.
changed. And that's kind of what it's about, and it is a severe form of like mental and emotional abuse, because you feel like you can't trust yourself.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where imposter comes in. When
Yeah.
you're removed from the situation, it doesn't, you don't automatically go to, oh, well, now it's over. I can trust myself again. No,
No.
you question everything. And it takes
Yeah.
a long time to move through that. So tell us what happened. Tell us what you did.
So we're sitting there and I'm drafting podcast episodes and I'm rethinking of these men who have been in my life. And finally I went, this isn't just my bitch session, because when I came up with the title, it was literally just going to be a comedy hour where I just railed. I
I
go,
got you.
it felt like finally it was my turn to tell my narrative, because for so long I was letting people rewrite my own story.
Mm-hmm.
So, what ends up happening is I record these episodes and I relive these moments in my timeline. And for the first time in a while, I have time to just kind of sit with them and see the relationship from the different angles.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd think that would be re-traumatizing, but actually it's made me more empathetic, oddly, because hurt people. And so when you look at everything from a different angle and you kind of see your part in it all and their part in it all and how it all came together, you kind of end up realizing that hurt is kind of part of it, just like part of life in general. We wouldn't be able to have positive relationships if, or even know when someone was treating us positively, if at some point they also treated us badly. And you kind of just weigh it in your head all the time. So it makes the podcast has made me just okay with that negative instead of always being resentful towards it or in fear that it'd happen again or things like that. It just makes me go, it's okay that that happened. It's okay that one day I was the most important person in this man's life. And then one day he couldn't ever text me back and I never heard from him again. It's okay because it can be both. I can be both the person who is the most important person in his life, and I can also be the person that he walked away from. And both of those are valid. And one doesn't
Mm-hmm.
outweigh the other.
Right. And it's a point at which you come to a realization of whether or not really those actions were about that person and not
Mm-hmm.
you.
Right.
And that's most of the time what it is. It's about them. It's about something that they can't confront, they can't face. That's what makes them run or flee. So you could very well, they could be somewhere right now going, I'm so stupid. Why would I have done that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But
they're
they
all
don't.
doing it. It's all of them. They're all looking at me right now going, I'm an idiot.
That's right. Every
I could
last one of them.
I could have had her and I could have had her forever and I could have tricked her into being my wife. And now instead she's a comedian. She has content. And now everyone will know that I let her get away. They're
Right.
all losing a lot of sleep at night. I can
Yes,
tell.
definitely. Definitely. Feel it in your bones right there. So, but here's the thing, and that's the beauty of the laughter after is that, so there's 2 points here.
Yeah.
The first point, that I'm gathering from this, and it's something that I walk through in coaching. I've walked through it in therapy. I know you've walked through it in therapy.
Mm-hmm.
That there is a point at which you have to disassociate from the thing that's happened so that you can view it from an outside point of view.
Yep.
And I think that talking into a microphone and hearing it,
Mm-hmm.
talking into a screen, even replaying it, those things, as you write it out and you
Yeah.
prep and you plan it, it makes you see it from a different vantage point because you are doing it to present to
Yep.
somebody. And when you do it that way, you're going to get these aha moments, because it's the same thing like, say, NLP or meditation type things do. It takes you, it disconnects you from that and lets you look at it from the outside so that you can personify what is happening and understand that that doesn't define you and that's not your
Mm-hmm.
identity.
Yeah.
And I like to say all the time, and it's something in my Oola coaching background in one of the trainings that I had, where you are is where you are. It's not who you are. And if
Mm-hmm.
you understand that anytime you're going through something, you're in a place in time and you've made it through all the hard times so far. So you're going to make it through this when you have a 100% track record and you're going to continue to move forward, and you'll look back on situations and go, you know what? I made it through that too.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing is that, and what this show highlights is that here you are talking about this and the hurt that it's caused, and in the same sentence, laughing about it.
Yeah.
Because you do understand that once you've released resentment and shame and anger, which is a part of what forgiveness is, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but that once you've released that, well, now you have the ability to see it for what it is,
Yeah.
and you can laugh about it. You
Mm-hmm.
can make a joke about it. You can make fun of it. You can make fun of the situation. You can make fun of yourself. You can do that because now you have found your way clear of the parts that were holding you back from being able to find that laughter.
Well, and my sense of humor and the ability to laugh has also become a really great thing on gauging what I've worked through and what I haven't worked through yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also the fickle thing about healing is you heal one thing and one thing pops up and is like, ha, I was hiding behind that. So, an
It's like
example
an
I
onion. It's
yeah,
layers. Yeah.
yes. I love a good Shrek reference.
There you go.
I was talking, well, I've said it on the show. So I experience disordered eating from time to time. And when I was able to kind of compartmentalize the mental and the emotional abuse that I've suffered from people that I have cared about me, um, I was able to also kind of have a realization that I was like, oh, my eating patterns aren't normal. And I've convinced myself that these are normal because it quote unquote makes me feel better. So now I had to do the grown up thing, and I had to be honest with my mental health professional. And it's like, surprise, we thought I was getting better. And I thought I would just spring on you today that I have disordered eating. And, we did an assessment or whatever, and it's something that we work on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my sister, I was driving to her house to visit for the weekend, and she cracked a joke that she's cracked before and a million times. And it was about my digestion and my system and all of it. And like, I was just kind of jarred by it and I was taken aback. And when I didn't um take part in the bit like I normally take part in the bit, she kind of doubled down and she just kept going because we're a big obnoxious family anyways. Like if you're not going to pick up the bit, I can do another 5. So and finally, I'm driving and I'm crying, and she's confused because she's like, I swear 3 weeks ago we were joking about this. I was like, I know that we were joking about this. I go, but now I've had to like come to terms that I have disordered eating, and now I just feel like we can't be making fun of it anymore because how is that going to help like my progress getting through it? And it's always
Mm-hmm.
just checking in with yourself and then also checking in with the people around you.
Right. And that's so good. I love that you brought up that laughter and being able to laugh in a situation is a good way to gauge whether
Mm,
you're on the healing side of the trauma, of the abuse. Look, healing is a never ending journey. Just because you're able to release things and you're able to move past things and you're able to heal some of your wounds doesn't mean you'll never be triggered again.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look, we did the Depp Heard thing. And even though there was a lot of what Amber was saying, I couldn't believe her. She was going in and out of belief
Uh-huh.
in some parts of her testimony, and they were very triggering moments.
Mm-hmm.
If you've been through this and you're hearing this, it's very difficult to listen to. It makes it even harder to listen to when you hear somebody moving in and out of what seems to be honest, and you're thinking, how, why would somebody make this up?
Yeah.
Why would somebody go to this extreme? Why would you lie? Why would you lie on parts and tell part truths? It was all a bit overwhelming. And so, when you're in those places, it doesn't mean like I talk about what I've been through pretty freely, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean I'm never going to be triggered by something.
Right.
As a matter of
Well,
fact, you learn to cope, avoid and put yourself in safe situations so that you're not triggered.
one of the things that I'm super surprised, that I'm not surprised at all, that I've had emotional, stressful, anything moments with the Depp Heard trial. Like, it was a lot, and it was a lot to be thrown at all at once. And then you had to
So
grapple with, like,
much.
it was so much. But Jules and I think Jules is in the audience.
Oh, yeah, I know
Every week
Jules.
we're watching The Time Traveler's Wife, which is a book that I've loved since I was 15 years
Mm-hmm.
old.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, every week it's making me more and more emotional and mad about things that I've gone through that I'm seeing being pulled out
Mm-hmm.
onto screen, like the grooming aspect and whether or not this
Mm-hmm.
man groomed her to marry him when she was 6 years old and he was just some fun time traveler guy who came to visit and play
Mm-hmm.
checkers with her.
Mm-hmm.
As a person who's been groomed before, as a person who's felt like they didn't have a lot of choice in all of the things that they quote unquote chose to do with their life or things like that. It's amazing how when I was 15, I thought that this book was the peak of romance. I was like, oh, a man, he'll just appear one day in a field and he'll tell you, it's me, I'm your husband in the future. And then, you're obsessed with him from that day on. And then I remembered my own obsessive tendencies when I was 15. And I'm like, man, there are a couple of times where if a guy that I was obsessed with, actually, it did happen. A guy that I was obsessed with would continuously tell me, when we're older, we'll just get married. It'll be easy. It'll be you and I, and we'll get married. And I screenshot a conversation that I stumbled upon on my Facebook Messenger and I sent it to my mother. And I was like, Mother, where were you when I was 19 years old, not even romantically linked to this man, but house hunting with him for our future home,
Oh my god.
being promised a puppy and everything? And so it's so weird to be put into Claire's shoes and just be mad that you know that she's going to sign up to be this man's wife when she herself doesn't even know if she ever had a choice in it. Because the guy showed up when she was 6 and he's like, I'm your husband.
Right, right, right. And that brings in a whole nother aspect because a lot of time people think that grooming only happens with children, and that is not the case.
No.
It is easier to groom a child, usually somebody maybe over the age of 25, 26, 7, 8. It gets a little more difficult, but depending on where they come from, if they've been through those some of those experiences, let's say experiences like Johnny Depp's experience, right,
Mm-hmm.
where you've had an abusive parent, it was a very dominant household, then you can see where when you fall into relationships and a dominant female is in that relationship, how you would revert
Yeah.
to how you protected yourself when you were a kid. And if you're not very, very super aware, well, they know
I
what they're
mean,
preying on. They
yeah.
do. People, that's how they operate. So I mean, so it's an interesting, yeah,
Yeah.
conundrum. Yeah.
A lot of my relationships in my adulthood have been direct responses to something going wrong in my life and me going, I know, I will just enter this relationship and it will distract me from the things that are going wrong. And meanwhile, they are watching all of the things going wrong in my life and kind of just making it their playground.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and I mean, when you're in a relationship with someone who is that type of person, they know the signs and know how to work that, prey on that, how
Hmm.
to win you over and then flip, into what they really
Yeah.
are. So I mean, it's a sad situation. The beauty of it is you've come through those situations and you're realizing or understanding what that all was about. And so right now you don't have a significant other in your life.
I have a cat. She's real
Penelope.
great. She's real great.
Me, Penelope in
Um,
the podcast. Go.
no, I'm not even actively trying to date. I am very much one of those creative people that once they have a project, I become very hyper focused on it. And then
Mhm.
years later, I'll be like, "Do I have friends?" And people will be like, "Yeah, we've been waiting for you to call. We've just been sitting here."
Just waiting for you to come up for air, honey.
Right. Um, actually, I was at a friend's wedding a couple of weeks ago and I was actively apologizing to people that I'm never around anymore. And they're like, "You're busy, Nat, and we get it." And I'm like,
Right,
"Okay."
right.
So I'm not even pursuing dating, which feels weird because I'm 33 and I feel like society would like to put that deadline clock on me like, 33 and not even trying to find a partner.
Mhm.
You don't even have any prospects. Bridgerton's big now, so
Right, right. Well, so, we don't live in, the 17th century, so that's nice.
nice.
Um, but the thing is that, first of all, I don't think there's an age limit. I think that's a fake society type of weirdness. But the other thing is, I think it's beautiful that you've gone through the things you've gone through. You are okay with being with yourself.
Hmm.
You're learning, discovering, and becoming the you that is like, hey, I was born with me, I'm dying with me. And so that's the person it's got to be,
Yeah,
the one that I'm okay with, because at the end of the day, that's really all you have.
yeah,
It's nice to have the people in your life, and you can say till death do us part, and that's fine. That might be true all the way up until the end, until death, and then somebody's living on. You
yeah,
have to be okay with yourself, and in a healthy relationship, you being okay with you and them being okay with them makes it a lot easier
yeah,
for you guys to be able to move through and support each other, and yes, and yet keep some autonomy, so I
yeah,
think that's super important. And so where you are right now, I think, is going to lend itself to not only being able to attract the right person to you that's going to be on the same path as you and in the same place as you, it's going to be able to create a really uh, good relationship as
hmm.
well. So
And the wonderful thing about podcasting and the creator community in general is that virtually you get to meet all of these people who know exactly what it takes to be in the middle of a creative process or what it feels like to be spiraling about your creative process or walking away from it. So the podcast has become my biggest gateway into people who get me. Like, I've always had really great people in my life and I love my friends and my family or whatever. But when or whatever, that's rude.
whatever,
Whatever.
family or
Um
whatever you want to call them.
uh but when it comes to like people who look at you and affirm the work that you're doing and affirm that creativity still matters in the year 2022 with all of the bullshit that is going on, um it's really meaningful. And
Hmm.
then there's this whole side effect with the podcast where I've discovered a lot about myself, but also it also has a lot of gray areas where it's like, but you haven't explored this. And these are all of the internalized misogyny, heteronormative, capitalistic, patriarchal viewpoints that you carried in your head. And
Hmm.
therefore, you never even considered, hey, maybe you play around with your sexuality spectrum, or hey, maybe you play around with what a job looks like for you. So it's also lending itself for me to even still be living in the gray where I'm still just kind of stumbling around like a new deer.
Right. And I like that because what you're saying is because of societal constraints, cultural constraints, your experience growing up, you just never went outside of lines that you
Hmm.
thought were lines that had to be there. And now you're starting to realize that maybe those lines are blurred. Maybe
Yeah.
that's not really a line. Maybe I can move the line. Who put this line here anyway? It's not my
Maybe
line.
like longitude and latitude, they're just made up.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, so that's cool. I like that. And I also like the fact, and I'm going to bring this up because Sonia's in the audience, who is a friend of mine, and I know she's a very creative person too. And the fact that you have recognized that tapping into this as a creative process is
Hmm.
also helping you to process through some of the narratives and blocks that you've had, which just goes to show that creativity, guys, is an actual form of healing. It's an
Yeah.
actual part of healing and a way to process and heal, just the same as getting out into nature or the same as exercise, which releases certain hormones to help you clear your mind and be able to process. And so I
Hmm.
think that that's amazing too. So, and I like that this creative process is kind of helping you work through that.
Thank
I,
you.
I don't know that I would have ever thought, hey, if I do a podcast, it's going to help me, it's going to be therapeutic, but it
Yeah,
does make sense.
it
Makes
does.
complete sense.
Especially when you're a verbal processor like me and you would just like to trap someone on the phone for hours on end to dump all of this into. Now everyone gets to be a willing participant into my
Right.
dumping.
They can exit if they want to.
Yeah.
They're not like, "Oh, I gotta
Oh gosh.
go," or they look at the phone and go, "Yeah, no, I don't know if
Mm.
I'm answering this one." Yeah, right. I was in a mastermind that I'm a part of today, and one of the things that they talked about, we talked about in there, is similar to this too. Is about being able to put the stuff down. I don't
Mhm.
care what it is, whether it's creativity, whatever it is, to be able to brain dump and to put it down somewhere. I think journaling or writing or any of those things kind of come into play too. And I think when you start adding all of these little pieces together as parts of the process, I
Mhm.
think that it makes total sense. As a matter of fact, one of the things that they had us writing today was like 10 things that we say we're going to promise and commit to give back to the universe when we have the success that we're aiming for.
Oh, I
When we
love that.
reach a place that we know that we're aiming for, like, okay, hey, universe, God, whatever it is that you believe, right? Source, however you look at this, when you say, hey, I'm doing all of this for a reason and I'm pouring and I'm working. And if this is in alignment with my purpose and I achieve that, then here are the things that I'm going to do to give back because that's part of the reason why I'm doing it. And
Mhm.
and one of the things that I've always said is I want to be a six-figure giver. I want to get sponsors. I want to be able to do this where I'm helping people, but then I can turn around and financially pour into programs that don't exist yet.
Yeah.
And, that's a big thing for me. And one of the things that I've thought about, which you'll love, my daughter's a theater geek.
Mhm.
She was raised in theater, she taught theater. And she it wants to open her own, right, like theater studio,
Mhm.
and do some like junior community theater,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so this is something in the works. And one of the things, because she is also a victim of sexual abuse, I said, oh, I was reading in this book about therapy, that is theater therapy.
Mhm.
And have you heard of this?
I've heard of something, and I don't know if I'm going to use the right term, but it's called talkback therapy, where you kind of get a group of people that have a similar experience. The example that I was walked through was unhomed people. So they would talk about their experience being unhomed, and then you would build the theater scene around their story as a way for them to also reprocess that.
Right. And so that's similar, but in this situation, you also talked about the people in your life that you needed something from. So like let's say you had something in your childhood, you needed something from a parent and you were angry and you needed to be able to express that, then one of the people will become the parent and you
Oh.
guys role play that out. and then you also have expressed what you needed from the parent. And so you are expressing to them your anger, your frustration, what you had to do to protect yourself. And then that parental figure,
Mm-hmm.
character, will come in and give you what you needed.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot to it. That's a very oversimplified thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I haven't participated in this. I've read about it, but and obviously it's conducted by a therapist.
Yeah.
But I would be like, that would be so neat that she can run her theater, but also have a component where she could bring in a therapist and do theater therapy. Just have a nonprofit component to it.
Yeah.
You know,
It's like EMDR, but acted out.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's allowing you to take that thing like you're doing
Mm-hmm.
on the podcast and put it out in front of you
Mm-hmm.
and let that dissociation occur so that you can see it from a different outside vantage point. So it
Yeah.
is really interesting, and I think would be totally cool in a healing process, especially for people who are creative, and
Yeah.
would make an amazing outlet. Anyway, um, so look, you guys, I would love to invite anybody who wants to come up on stage. If you guys have questions, we have Jules Rocksteady, who talked about how wonderful we are. Thank you, Rock.
Oh, thanks, Rock.
Sonia, Natalie, who is our person up here, me, Kareem. So I appreciate you guys being in the show. I've seen a couple people pop in and out, and hopefully they'll come back and finish up with the replay. I know we got a few shows going on right now. So, but if you guys have any questions, invite yourself up to stage. Anybody's welcome up here. It's the beauty of Fireside. We get to interact and ask questions and talk it out, and that's part of the process, and I like it. But anyway, so while we're waiting to see if anybody
Mm-hmm.
wants to chit chat, so you've been through all of this, and you're a year down the road. How do you feel about podcasting and your tech and all of that now?
Well, so if you haven't noticed on Fireside, I don't have a co-host. I mean, my sister's friend Katie is practically becoming my co-host because she's super supportive. Cheers to Katie.
Yay, Katie.
Um, but my co-host stepped down, and when my co-host stepped down about a year into it, I had to learn the tech part, and no one's complained yet. But here's the thing, like I have hearing issues. I think it's connected to all of my sinus issues. And so when people are telling me about the different qualities of sound and whatnot, at no point do I notice any difference. Wendy
Oh,
was
okay.
trying to do a mic exercise with me at some point when I was moving farther away and closer to the mic. And finally, I was like, I have to do this alone when I can focus on it because
Right.
I have to listen to musical soundtracks before I go and see musicals. I was at El Keen recently and she did all of her new songs that I didn't know. So it was all just jarbled. I'm an audio processing thing. We think it's part of my undiagnosed ADHD, but who's to say? I'm not a doctor. I'm just on TikTok.
Right.
Uh, but so the tech thing I think is going well. No one has complained yet. I could definitely do some better marketing and hashtag work. I don't know how the hashtags work.
I don't either. And say hey.
Hi.
She can't hear because y'all are in a
Yeah.
headset.
Mm-hmm.
But the fun thing about it is that if you do some research in it, hashtags, even though they're okay and it's okay to still use them what you need and make sure they matter. But keywords and SEO is so much more important, and it's getting so
Yeah.
much smarter that if you put those words actually into your descriptions and into your titles and stuff like that, it's supposed to be just as good.
There
Even
we
on
go.
social media, even on social media
Even
now
on
is
social
using
media.
SEO. So,
The
um,
robots will do it all for us.
yes, exactly. The robots will do it for you. So there you go. But so like I'm super glad though that you're sticking it out and getting through the tech part of it
Yeah.
because
Well,
you know,
and I think eventually during the pandemic, I also did the artist way. And I think with the artist way, coupled with the podcasting, coupled with all of the other creative things that I do, at this point, I'm like, I can really teach myself to do anything. Like
yeah,
anyone could really teach themselves how to do anything. Grey's Anatomy kind of convinced us that we could even like maybe do a medical procedure in an elevator if a smarter person walked us through it. Like,
Right.
I don't know.
Right. My dad watches surgery shows and TV, and he's like, "Oh, I could do that eye surgery. I
I
could
can
do
do
that."
that.
I'm like, "Oh my god, get away
What's
from me."
very intricate about the eye? Probably nothing.
Probably
but
nothing at all. Anyway,
but yeah,
um,
at this point, I mean, I don't know what else tech could be thrown at me, but I bet you I'd learn how to use it.
yeah, right. Um, I am in a place where that like I need to learn it, but I just don't want to
Mhm.
learn anything more. My brain hurts.
Yeah.
It's like, what is going on? And everything is moving so fast. And so I was talking to somebody about the upcoming trends, and how in, like, say, the next 10 years, we're going to advance like 100 years when it comes to technology. It's going to be moving so super fast that it's just not going. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to live to see all of it, but it is a lot.
I can't wait
So,
until I get to be a hologram at all of my family functions and I don't
right,
actually have to be there because it's a
right.
hologram.
I'm in the bed, but hey.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that'll be fun. All
Yeah.
right, so nobody's coming up. I mean,
That's
Jules
okay.
is your friend. Jules, she
She's
can
in the
talk.
car though. Don't call her out. I think she's in the
Oh,
car.
it's okay. You just can unmute while you're driving. I do it all the time. Just
I
don't
like
come
to
on.
I
Don't
get
come on
stressed while
camera.
I'm driving. I have such bad
Oh,
driving
really?
anxiety.
Yeah. Oh, don't drive in my city. Woo.
That I mean, it's a byproduct of the Jules is going to come up.
Yay. Sonia should come up too, because she's really very creative, and she just talked to me today about some
Everyone
new
come up.
creative things that she's doing.
I made my
Um,
t-shirt if you would like to talk to me about my t-shirt.
oh, well, tell us about your t-shirt. Well, let's hear
Oh,
what Jules has to say first. Let's see. Jules, what you have to say? Tell us.
Hello, friends. Natalie is
Yay.
right. I am in the car. My son is driving, so I can talk.
okay.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So we're safe.
Okay. Safety first.
Safety first. But
Safety.
I do have to say I loved sitting in on this conversation because I do know Natalie pretty well, but hearing her story in a different way was really I don't know, it makes me feel even more special to be her friend.
I mean,
Oh.
honestly, I didn't want to embarrass Jules, but now I'm going to. You were talking about how, like, all of this healing and all of the creativity would eventually bring to me the person that I'm supposed to meet. And honestly, it's happened with several people, and Jules is one of them. So it's not really like a romantic partner connection, but
Right.
it's like, I'm going to spend the rest of my life with these people, and I
Yeah.
hope they're prepared. Like,
Right. And yes, it doesn't have to be an intimate romantic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It could be the people that you need in your life, that just
yeah,
you need to have in your life as support, as people who are there for you just because you are you,
yeah,
Yeah.
and they are they, and that's that.
And it's nice to have somebody who understands, like Natalie was saying earlier, when you're creative and being a creator and you're not surrounded by people who understand that, but they still love you. There's still hurdles and challenges, and there's
Mhm.
still, these roadblocks that happen that you kind of need people who understand what that's like to be able to move forward or to get through those creative humps. Because I've heard so many times, just get a real job. Why don't you just get a real job already? Like,
because they
guys, I can't.
suck.
Yeah, I can't work 8 to 5. That sounds like death.
Yeah, because
Right.
they won't give me ADHD medicine because no one wants to put the label on my med card
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something like
yeah. I also spell things wrong, and I hear corporate America gets real mad about that.
right.
So
Capitalism makes me want to be perfect and I tried to
I
give up
just
my
can't. Yeah,
perfectionism when I turned 30.
yeah. Those days are over. Stop making me.
You can't
Also
make me
what
do it. You can't make me.
What they don't start, I mean, they do tell you that this is the dark side of creativity, but I do, at all points of my day, feel like I deserve accolades and feedback and affirmation. And when you're not surrounded by other people who need affirmation because they returned all of their voicemails in their office because in their mind it's just what you're supposed to do. So when you're like, I've recorded 5 episodes this week, and they're just like, isn't that what you're supposed to
Yeah,
do? Why are we clapping? And I'm like,
right.
because I'm Tinkerbell, and if you don't clap, I will perish.
I love
It's
it. I think
true.
I'm a fairy too.
Yeah.
And every time somebody says they don't believe in fairies, a fairy dies. It's just not
Yeah.
okay.
And you got to clap.
Clap, ring your bells. It's okay. So But the other thing is, I think that we also don't actually celebrate
No, we
our
don't.
wins. So I compare it to like the kids, when you have a kid crawling around on the floor and you're clapping because they were rocking, and
Hmm.
now they're crawling and you're like, oh, they're going to be walking, and then they pull themselves up and they're furniture surfing, and then they take 2 steps and they fall,
Yeah.
and you're clapping for them, yay, you took 2 steps, and they fall. You don't ever like, no one in life has ever looked at a kid
Hmm.
and go, oh, well, maybe you're just a crawler.
Yeah.
Stick to
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that 9 to 5 crawling, because walking is not for you. No, we celebrate the 2 steps, and their 2 steps turn into 4. And then we go, why did we want them to walk anyway?
Right.
Yeah.
Why did we?
Because
So true.
now I can't keep up with them. And if you think baby steps don't get you far, try chasing a
Oh
toddler.
my
Trust
gosh.
me, they get you far. But we celebrate all their little milestones, and
Hmm.
they're like, they look at themselves going, oh, I'm amazing for doing what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. I had a boss at one time tell me, he's like, I don't give compliments and I'm not going to cheer for you just because you did your job. That is what you're paid to do. And it was in direct conflict with our CEO at the time. He was like, Mr. Like, I love hyping people up and like millennials are the future and all of this. And so one time my coworker brought up, she's like, hey, what if your direct supervisor straight up told you, I refuse to compliment you. All you did was what I asked you to do. And our CEO kind of went, ooh. We were like, well, all right. But it's
Okay.
amazing.
Yeah.
And I would even like it if we started like cheerleading people's flops, because if you flop, it means that you tried something and you might do it better next time.
Right. And if you listen to thought leaders that work in this industry, people like Brene Brown, who work with corporations, and Simon Sinek, they talk about this exact
Hmm.
thing, encouraging failure. Because if you encourage failure, that is exactly how you get people to take the risks and they come up with the actual solution.
Yeah.
I think it was the girl who made Spanx,
Hmm.
Ashley.
I
I can't
won't know
remember her
this.
name. Okay, I can't remember her name. But anyway, the girl who invented Spanx, if you go read her story, just go look up anywhere and read her story. Her dad at dinner every night, his primary question was not what are your highs, what are your lows? His question was, how did you fail today?
Mm,
And that was his way of saying, I want to know what risk you took that didn't work, because that's where you learned.
yeah.
And Jules, you have something to say because you might.
Yeah, it's interesting too how we, in some circles, we praise failure because that is the way that you learn. It's how you grow. I mean, who doesn't remember the questions they got wrong on the driver test or on that really important test in school, right? Because it impacts you. But when you do move into the corporate world, how some companies and corporations, failure is unacceptable. You're not allowed to be human. And I wonder how we get to that point where we can have that regular reminder that we're human and mistakes are going to happen and it needs to be okay, because there is a level of, I don't want to use the word trauma because that needs to be reserved for things that really truly are traumatic, but there is an impression that's negative on you when somebody harps on these human things that happen that you do, that you're trying to work through, especially when you're neurodivergent. It's like constant punishment for not being perfect.
Right. And so it's a stressor, and it creates anxiety
Hmm.
unnecessarily. And the truth of the matter is it also creates an environment in in corporate. I mean, I know this is kind of off the topic, but it creates a corporate environment where no one is willing to make a decision. They want the person above them to make the
Yep.
decision because
Yeah.
they're not going
Yeah.
to take responsibility if something goes wrong, because it's not okay if they mess up.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So then all they do is push it up the ladder. And guess what? It just keeps going up and up and up. And nobody will actually say, yes, do it this way until it gets to the top.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
The
then I can do the work myself. You know what I mean?
the same employer who said, I won't clap for you for doing your job. That's what you're here to do, and demanded perfection is the same employer who begged us every week at our department meetings, why aren't you all just like throwing out ideas and trying to take risks with me or whatever. And we're like, dude, we're scared. You're kind of volatile.
Because we're only doing what we're supposed to do. We're not
Mm-hmm.
doing more because you don't cheer for even what we are doing. Why would we do extra?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it just is a very, very just diminishing type of environment to work in. And it's not growth oriented or
No.
a growth mindset. And that's something that can bring us back to this topic, because when you are going through the traumas in life and you're overcoming, all of it is about being able to grow.
Yeah.
So when you're able to work through that, when you're able to heal, when you're able to process, when you're able to actually forgive, which is about releasing and not holding on to that bitterness. And mostly it's about you, right? Because most of the times when we think we have to forgive somebody else, you do it and you feel better. And that forgiveness is not absolution. It's not like saying, oh, it's okay what you did.
Mm-hmm.
I forgive you. No, that's not what it is. It is about being able to let that person be unattached to you,
Yeah.
because they're taking up space in your emotions and in your life. They could have moved on. They might not
Mm-hmm.
care at all about what's going on in your world. They're out there doing their thing, and you're still angry
Yeah.
and resentful and guilty and full of shame. But the thing is, when you release all of that and say, okay, even if it was a sick individual who abused you, and you go, okay, I forgive you for being sick. I hope you get the help you need. I don't have to be friends with you. I don't have to have you in my life, but I am releasing all of the things you had a hold on me with. I'm letting that go, because you just free up all this space and it feels really good. And then you look at yourself and you go, okay, well, that felt really good, but
Mm-hmm.
there's still a little something and I can't put my finger on it. Well, that's because that needs to be turned inward,
Yeah.
where you can forgive yourself for maybe not seeing it,
Yeah.
or putting up with it for as long as you did, or maybe there was some small part or role that you played in it, or maybe
I
you returned it sometimes, who knows.
listen, I spent a lot of the middle of my therapy sessions going, and I should have known better because all the signs. And it's like, you don't have to know better. Like, you don't, like, you're not supposed to just walk into situations and be like, let me take the landscape and decide if these people are going to treat me badly.
Right, and so now that you've been through it, you might pick up on some things intuitively. You might pick up on some little red flags
Yeah.
that cue you in because you've been through it. But that is not the way you're wired. We
Mm-hmm.
are technically wired to trust people and to, believe them at face value. We shouldn't have to go into every situation as if we have to be on guard and doubt. That's not to
Mm-hmm.
say to be silly or stupid or naive. It's to say that for the most part, in reality and in life, and I believe this, that people are good.
Yeah.
That really is true. And if you look around, you'll see that more often than not if you open your eyes and you actually look around and see it. But, like if you watch the news all day, well, maybe not. You're going to only see the parts that they give you. So you got to look for it yourself, you know?
Yeah.
And so, and I do think that right here on Fireside, doing podcasts, doing things like this creates a tribe of like minded people. And that's one of the reasons I like doing the show, is I feel like we're creating community and connection where people can listen in, hear these, play the replays, and understand that if I can and she can, all of us can.
Mm-hmm.
We're not, I don't know. I don't think that any of us here so far have been anybody that's like alien or anything that would be
Yeah.
something, different, so I haven't come across that being yet. I think we're all just people. We're human beings and, trying to do the best we can with what we have.
That's right.
Yeah,
I am a proponent of, if you have a choice between being silly and not silly, you should be silly.
for sure. For sure. For
Like,
sure.
that is
I'm
my
with you.
motto.
I'm with you. And I think that everyone should consider that gauge where you
Mm-hmm.
can tap into the laughter. And that was one of the things I said on one of Wendy's shows too. And it was about it was my story about the situation where I was laughing so hard on a girls' trip that we took. after the divorce, after things kind of started to settle down a little bit, and I just needed to be able to process and get away. So we took this girls' trip to Disney,
Yeah.
and and I peed in a urinal, and it was stupid. It was silly. And we listened to Air Supply, and we laughed so hard at my expense, mind you.
Mm-hmm.
And my face hurt, my sides hurt. I was sore the next day, but it made me realize how long it had been since I
Yeah.
laughed like that, and how healing it is to be able to laugh, to be
Yeah.
able to let go. Even if you're in the middle of whatever it is that is going on, you can still find a pocket of escape,
Mm-hmm.
find your people, find your tribe, find whatever it is, and tap into it. I don't
The
care if it's a comedy show. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the first time that I laughed during the pandemic, and I mean, like, really gave myself over to laughter, it was Taylor Tomlinson's first Netflix special. I think she was 25 or 27 at the time, and it was Quarter Life Crisis. And in 2 weeks, I will be seeing her live for the third time because it made such a difference to me that at this point I will support her in whatever it is that she wants to do with her career. Went and saw her at a small club. Then the next week she announced her tour, and I was like, I gotta be there for my girl's tour, her first theater tour. Like, I gotta go.
Right. And so people, this is another thing that I think we are all aware of in this creator community. And that is that we think, oh my gosh, I'm trying to do all of this stuff and creativity and what's it for? But the truth of the matter is you can see how it impacts and it serves.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that putting your creativity, your art, your your babies out there, right? That when you do that, you have people like you who were so impacted. She maybe she knows you, I don't know, but
She every once in a while she like answers my DMs, but no big deal, no big deal. But
right. But the thing is, you look at that and you go, like, this person could really not even know the impact that she
mm-hmm.
had on you. And in those places, in their art, they've saved someone
Yeah.
in some sort of way. And that is incredible. That's incredible.
And then
So,
I urge everyone, because it is a hard knock life in the
mm,
creative comedian art movie field, that if someone has taken a moment out of their day and made you feel better through their content, creativity, art, any of it, please let them know. They get trolled so often on the internet. I am a big internet positivity like fighter. I'm always sliding into people's DMs. I'm always commenting on their posts. I'm always like, heck yeah, do the thing. I have told Taylor Tomlinson multiple times that I have enjoyed watching the trajectory of her career and how her comedy has evolved in just the last year. Why?
right,
Because we need to hear it.
right,
Because
right,
you're so close to the product and your content that you don't know if it's good. I end
right.
every show going, well, that was a manic shit show.
Well, yeah, so who knows? But we know on the flip side
Yeah.
of it, we do know. So that's why you keep doing and you keep going. And I've done that even with bands. There's a band that I follow called the Revivalists. The first time I saw them, they were just playing at a stage at a little fundraising event. They were the first ones. When you're first at the earliest show of the event,
Mm-hmm.
you know that you're like kind of like that band that was like, all right, you can play.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come on, you can play. So I mean, yeah, it's a paid gig, but nobody really knew who they were. And I'm listening to their music and I'm like, God, these guys are amazing. I put their name in my notes in my phone,
Mm-hmm.
and I started following them like I was some kind of little groupie. Now, I could be their mother. That's how much younger they are than me. I could be your
Mm-hmm.
mother. That's how much younger they are than me. They're your age. And and this was 10 years ago. So I'm
Yeah.
following these 20 something year olds and I'm like, oh my God. And then here they are and they pop up here. Well, now they're doing amazing. They've got record deals, they've had commercial deals, they're doing great. And I feel like I helped raise them. They
Yeah.
don't know me. They don't
Yeah.
know me. I go to their shows. They don't go like, oh, hey, you're a super fan. I'm on their Patreon. They don't care.
I know that I'm
Right.
every friend. I'm a friend to every listener because I know that when I listen to podcasts, I truly believe that I am the host friend.
Yes,
So,
no, I agree with that, and they appreciate their fans, but there's no
mhm.
way they actually are
Actually,
like,
no.
"Oh, I
Well,
remember you from 10 years ago."
Well, and here's the thing. If you're going to go to a show with me, a concert, a comedy show, anything, and it's the type of show that has an opener, and you tell me that we can show up late because who cares about the opener, I will always chastise you. You
Mhm.
don't know who the opener is going to be or whether or not they're going to be good. And you should support those people because they also came up with a set, learned how to play the guitar, and wanted to entertain you for 20 minutes.
Amen, sister. So they were an opener type band. They were
Hmm.
an opener of an opener of an opener on that
Yeah.
day because there were probably 6 bands, right? And and so they were. And there was another show that I've gone to twice. I've gone to other shows where the opening band, I became a groupie of the
Yeah.
band. So I, and I love music. I'm from New Orleans. Music is a big thing here and lots of really amazing cultural music and musicians.
Hmm.
And so, you know, it's like, yeah, and this is the thing, their art, okay, again, back to this, creates laughter, it creates memories, it creates a culture around it, and it creates healing.
Yeah.
It creates healing. And so I think it's important. Anyway, we're getting late and we're
We
getting
are.
people just dropping off like
I'm
flies.
long winded.
Yeah, no, me too. Me too. And look, I don't really have a time limit, and I'm glad we moved it to 7 so that we had some space here so
Yeah.
that you could have time before your next commitment. But I really appreciate you coming on the show, Natalie, and getting to learn a little bit about you. It's fun. You're a
I
fun
appreciate
person.
you having me. I
Yeah.
love, even though that week we talked about a lot of things during that Deb Heard week, but every night I would click off of the show and I'd be like, I just really like spending time with Wendy and Deanna, even when we're talking about an awful abuse case. Like,
Yeah, and we have a good juxtaposition, she and
yeah.
I, because I like the minutia, I like the details, I like to pick up on the little things and the body language and all of
Hmm.
that, and the ums and the uhs, and she's like, yeah, but can't we just, like generalize and laugh about this? Can we make funny clips? And so I was like, yeah, so yes, we can do that too,
Yeah.
Wendy, for sure. You're the sound geek, not me. Um, so yeah, but it's funny, and I even still now till today, I sent her a TikTok today that was or a reel
Yeah.
today that was like Johnny's words in
Yeah.
the background about, yeah, you read that right. Yes, you
Yeah.
read that right.
Hmm.
Yeah, you read that right.
You read
Again,
that
you
one right
continue
too.
to read those right. you know, and that was the audio,
Yeah.
and then the person on the screen was like, when my husband sees the bank statement or the credit card statement, and then she pops up there, $1,200 on Container Store,
Yeah.
this $100 on this $100. Yeah, you read that
Yeah.
right.
You read
Yeah,
that
you
right.
read that right. I was
You read
like,
that one right
I
too.
am dying over here. It's so hilarious. Anyway, so I just know, whatever. Laugh more, people. Laugh
Laugh.
more. Stop taking everything so seriously. Life is short. All right. So we're gonna wrap it up. I like to say I see you and you're beautiful. I do believe that.
Oh,
I think you're such a beautiful person, Natalie, inside and
thank
out.
you. So are
And
you.
thank you. And I appreciate you coming on the show. And I am going to play some of my husband's music out here. And until next time, guys, here on Fireside, shine on.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
Natalie. Thanks for coming. Maybe I'm going to play music. Maybe I'm not because sometimes it acts up and it doesn't want to play. I guess I'm calling up Wakebot, which I hate doing because he's not that good usually.